Hey guys, how are you doing? In this story here, our protagonist, he had the worst luck in the world. He was summoned to another parallel world, and as soon as he got there, he was imprisoned and tortured. The guy didn't even know what was going on. But those people knew that his name was Kim and that he came from Korea. They even knew his favorite games. The guy was suffering without even knowing why. Then they accused him of having eliminated Princess Natanya. He said he hadn't done it, but those people wouldn't listen to him. This story here is really good, guys. I decided to pick a slightly different story and ended up bringing the chapters that were available. Lately, YouTube hasn't been recommending our video to the subscribers, so check if you're still subscribed to the channel, and activate the bell and also leave a comment to boost the video. Without further delay, let's get to the story. Our protagonist, his name was Kim, and he really liked games. If you also like games, comment which one you've been playing the most lately. I confess that I played LOL for a long time, but nowadays I managed to free myself from that addiction. He had managed to get into a good university and worked as an intern in a regular company. No one could predict that something bad would happen to him, but upon opening a door, he ended up entering another world. There he found people with strange clothes and Kim here. He almost had a heart attack, and when he looked back, the door he had entered had disappeared. But luckily he wasn't the only one. There were 3 more with him. These were the 4 summoned warriors. I've never seen so much diversity in heroes, guys. There's a guy who looks like a girl. There's a girl who looks like a child. And there's an old man who looks like an old man. And finally there was just an ordinary student called Kim, except he was the only one trembling all over. He was trembling not out of fear but out of excitement. The guy, he really thought this would be an RPG world. My son, in those isekai worlds, you only go there to get in trouble. And look at this shameless guy's face. So you can already imagine what he was trying to do with the waifus in that world, right? He even started trying to summon his status window, and the people there didn't understand anything. This woman said that in this world such a thing as a status window doesn't exist, but they had abilities, and she introduced herself as Princess Natanya. Wait a second, guys. Isn't this the princess that our protagonist was supposedly going to eliminate? She even gives a little smile there, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. And using a magical device, she starts checking his abilities. Our boy, he was anxious and making a weird face. She said that he had the storage ability. At that very moment, those priests who were by her side lost their minds. She didn't even have time to look back and was immediately impaled by a strange shadow. The kid, he keeps looking at the princess, and that shadow seemed to be a creature from another world. And as she fell to the ground, she started losing a lot of blood. She even had a message to tell the warriors. And before she could say anything, the creature simply shot a laser beam at the woman. Man, poor girl. The red liquid spread everywhere. If he wanted excitement and adventure, that's exactly what he was getting. It's that thing when other people get hit by a truck and end up in another world, they go to the world of Konosuba, surrounded by girls. But when it's us who get hit by a truck, we end up in the world of this manga. The kid, he was scared to death, and as he stretched out his hand, he began losing consciousness, and when he realized it, he already had a collar around his neck and was being taken to a prison. The guy looks out the window and sees that the prison was floating in the sky. This place was called Gina, and the jailer says that Kim has very bad luck. That public prison was about 23,000 feet high, and they said no one had ever managed to escape from that place. Yeah, my son, I think this fantasy world isn't what you expected. You'll see that this protagonist here only has bad luck. The guy really thought he would have lots of girls, but he ended up being thrown side by side with other prisoners. A woman appears claiming to be the director of Gina prison, and adjusting her beret, she said that just by looking at them she already felt like vomiting and kept saying they were filthy trash. The people who heard that didn't like it much, and the only thing the boy wanted was to get out of there as fast as possible. He was imagining that he could escape from that prison using his new ability, but the director ruined it by saying it's impossible to escape from the prison, and she kept saying things while looking at our protagonist. The guy got even more apprehensive, and as she approached, she said that this little boy had caught her interest. Yeah, my son, I think today is not your day. And as she left singing, she said that if anyone happened to irritate her, she would eliminate them. A prisoner started mumbling, and the woman immediately asked if he meant to say something. And when the guy opens his mouth to complain, he is trampled by the director. If the dude here hadn't been traumatized until now, this was the last straw. Think about what a crappy world to be reborn into. I think this is even worse than the world of Berserk. The woman says that the reason she is the guardian is because she is the most powerful. That's why they wouldn't have any chance. And if by chance they tried to escape, they would die. Next, he is taken to a dark area, and there they start beating the boy. The point here is to make him admit that he had eliminated the princess. But the guy insists that he didn't do it, and after hitting with the axe, they seem to have cut something. Outside, the director said that the boy kept resisting the pressure. That was a hallucination ability that forced people's minds. And our protagonist didn't know it, but he was in an illusion, guys. After all his senses were 100% real, so there was no way to tell. But in an instant, he ends up breaking that spell. The jailer along with the director are surprised, and he was panting, and when he looked at his fingers, he saw that they were whole and not cut. Even his ear was still in place. The director admits that it was an illusion, only to try to extract the truth from him, but the boy managed to get out of that spell because of his storage ability. The jailer, he asks if it was really just because of that, since the torture wasn't being effective. He keeps saying, wait a minute, you did all that to me for 3 days straight just so I would admit to something I didn't do. In a serious way, she asks, "What's the big deal in that after all humans from Earth were trash?" She explains that in the past there was a race with 2 horns on their foreheads. They lived in a peaceful village, but one day, a guy from Earth was summoned to this place, and upon finding this village he eliminated 97% of the people. This summoned warrior, he had an ability called God Mode, but the director managed to go there and stop him. And on his deathbed the guy said he only did that to force a way out. What the director was trying to say is that human, he saw this world as if it were a video game, and on top of that he called that village a training field. That's why she hated Earthlings, and it was no different with our hero. In a serious way, she asks if he regretted having eliminated the princess. And kneeling on the ground, he shouts for the 1000th time that he didn't do it and that he wouldn't even have any benefit from killing the princess. But the director doesn't really believe him and ends up kicking him in the face, grabbing him by the shirt. She keeps saying that he will rot in that prison, and that it wasn't her job to decide if this guy was guilty or innocent. Preparing a punch, she welcomes him to this world. The poor guy ended up fainting on the ground, and later he woke up inside a cell. This world was no joke, and all his friends and family were left behind. He hadn't even asked to come to this world in the first place, and all of this was the fault of that princess who had summoned him. If it weren't for her, our boy wouldn't be in this situation. The guy thought he was having an illusion, but she was right there in front of him. Extending her hands, the princess asked if he would like to be freed. He didn't know if this was one of those illusion spells or not, but it was too real to be a lie. So he ended up holding her hand. "You're alive, princess? I could swear I saw you die right in front of me." He was curious to know how she came there, but the feeling of relief that she was alive was even greater. Holding the girl by the shoulder, he said that now he could declare himself innocent, but the princess made a face, and taking his hand off her shoulder, she said there would be no way to prove that he hadn't done it. But Kim, he wasn't understanding anything. She stays in a kind of ethereal form, showing that she was no longer alive. A strong light is emitted by the girl. He even had to cover his face with his hand. She had transformed into another being, and reveals that in fact she is dead. This ethereal form was formed only by mana, and only Earthlings could see her. She didn't have enough mana to release her powers. And most importantly of all, she wanted to know if he remembered the face of that person. He tries to remember, but he couldn't even remember the face of those other Earthlings properly. It was as if part of his memories had been erased. She also needed to know how they had invaded her castle. Even if she was in that ethereal form, he couldn't tell this to other people because no one would believe him since only he could see her. So Kim asks what he should do. Since she suggested helping him but didn't say anything. She seemed very calm after all. The one who was screwed was him. And besides, he hadn't even asked to be summoned to this world. So all of this was her fault. The girl says that there is indeed a way to get out of that place, and the guy already gets curious asking how. And she said that it was simply by escaping. But it would be difficult since they were more than 23,000 feet high, and they would have to follow a plan to the letter. The scene changes to the next day when he was in that interrogation. The jailer keeps asking if it was him who killed the princess. And crying a lot, he admits, saying that yes, it was him. This was terrible because he was admitting to something he didn't do. But all of this was part of his plan. They ask if he was really admitting that he had killed the princess. So they sent for someone to confirm his admission. It was a woman called Amber from the patrol team. When she arrived there, she said that the man who eliminated the princess had a dumb and idiotic face. She takes off his handcuffs, and holding his hand, she keeps saying that it's a pleasure to meet him. The jailer tells Amber to stop chattering and quickly show the boy the way. The snake woman ends up putting on a new handcuff and starts dragging him. If you think he already had it bad up to this point, it's because you haven't seen anything yet. He asks what was going on, and she replies that she was getting rid of him. The goal of Gina prison is to make criminals confess. After that, they are sent to another place to have some use. Now that he had admitted, there was no turning back. This story here was giving Kim the chills, and she still said that all trash needed to be thrown in the trash bin. They keep walking down the corridors, and she introduces herself again, saying her name is Amber, and that she works on the patrol team. This division consisted of elite guard members, and she was responsible for taking care of the place where he would stay. And in a threatening tone, she said that if he tried anything, she would eliminate him. And after a long walk, they arrive at a door. This was the place she wanted to show him. Seeing that scene, the poor boy becomes traumatized. There were people inside water tanks, and it wasn't just 1, 2, or 3. No, guys, it was thousands of tanks. That's what Gina meant. The boy asks if those people were being used as batteries. And Amber says it was more or less that. In fact, they were extracting the mana from their bodies. Since they were trash, they had to have some use, but it wasn't just mana they extracted, but also abilities. The guy, he is placed in a cell to wait for a few days. He didn't know what he should do anymore. On planet Earth you could still get lawyers, but here that didn't exist. I bet if such a penalty existed here in our world, crime would drop by 90%. The only way to get out of that place alive was by escaping. He was thinking that this was really impossible. Then the princess said she was going to tell a story to motivate him. When he entered this world, time on Earth hadn't stopped. Our boy, he thought that time here was different, but the princess said it wasn't. A month had already passed on Earth, just like here in this prison. The guy, he was worried, and she asks if he didn't want to return to his own family. That makes the guy angry, and he starts squeezing the girl, saying that all of this was her fault. In response, Natanya, she said that this wouldn't kill her because she was practically already dead. and he should focus on his own escape, otherwise he just had to accept that he would have a tragic end. Logically, he didn't want to die, so he accepts her help and even ends up letting go of the girl's neck. Even though he didn't trust this creature one bit, it was the only help he had. At that moment we see a guy training together with Amber. The place was completely destroyed and he said she did well. After sitting on the ground, she thanks him for the training. I don't know if you noticed, but she is a snake and she's wearing a skirt. Not that it's anything important, I just thought it was funny. He said he liked her power, and pointing at Amber, he said that the girl's weakness was that she could only focus on one target. And since she was paying attention to his hand, she didn't see a little teddy bear pop up on the ground. In a life or death battle, that would be a huge weakness. But she didn't pay attention to what he said, and just got excited asking if he also liked teddy bears. Changing the subject, she asks, why wasn't the director at the prison today? The guy said that the bosses called her for a mission. That's why the prison was without the director and without the captain. And that was very suspicious. That's why the other staff were supposed to stay on alert. Someone told the princess that they believed there was a traitor inside Gina. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of suspicious of this princess here, huh? He was standing in a line and the only thing he thought about was the scheduled day of escape, which was today. There were many guards on duty and all of them were heavily armed. The princess was by his side saying that those weapons were magical, and still greeting him in a cute way. He tries to talk to her, but she told him to stay quiet. No one could see her, but it would look strange if he kept talking to himself. She explains that after 30 minutes they would return to the cell and that was the moment they should prepare to start the escape. At that moment he approaches the guards in the corridor. They start running some analyses and put something on his neck to measure his ability. Those cuffs block the use of magic, and after taking the data, the guy says that he will probably be executed and so he heads toward his end. He was very nervous but he couldn't do anything about it. He would be placed inside a huge water tank. From afar, a man signals telling him to go over there, and the princess explains that they were evaluating his ability to see if it was worth draining his mana or magic. She says that he needs to escape from there and to activate the power, he just had to shout the name of the ability and also imagine a finger snap. She starts pushing him, telling him to go already, and so he starts climbing the stairs. He was nervous thinking about how he was supposed to use a magic he had never used before. And on the loudspeaker someone said that he had to stand right in the center. And upon entering they say he was supposed to try to absorb the mannequin. The guy had no idea how this worked. And as he stretched out his hand he thinks about the finger snap the princess had mentioned, ends up shouting the name of the ability storage. But nothing happens. They even ask if he was mocking them, but our boy, guys, he had never used that ability before. And after getting closer he tries again. He imagines the finger snap and says the word storage while clenching his fist. An aura emanates from his hand and the mannequin disappears. It had worked and he could see in the left corner of his eye his system status window. There it is. If you thought there wouldn't be system windows in this story, the people on the loudspeaker keep saying that this ability was interesting, and the only thing he thinks is that his inventory from the ability was practically infinite, but there was something bothering him. On the day he arrived in this world, the princess needed to find out his ability and she ended up making a very sinister face, but now she had a pretty normal face. I'm telling you guys, this princess there is not to be trusted. What he really wanted to know was why people seemed interested in this ability of his. The storage magic wasn't that strong, and the last order is for him to put the mannequin back on the stand. He keeps trying to click on the system windows, but it doesn't work. And the people who were watching find that funny. But this guy, he looks to the side and seems startled by the Catwoman. That's because she was an intruder and attacks the guard. He falls to the ground and keeps begging for mercy, but she wasn't messing around and ends up eliminating him. The soldiers nearby end up watching that scene and keep shouting to shoot. But just by looking at this Catwoman, you could already tell she was kind of crazy. The boy, he bangs on the glass asking the princess what happened and even thinks the escape plan had begun, but the princess said she didn't know this person and that Catwoman was causing major trouble inside that sector. She jumps into the middle of the explosions and even seemed to be enjoying all of it. The scene goes back 10 minutes earlier while a guy was eating chocolate. His colleague asks if he was eating again already, and at that moment he sneezes. The dude eating says that's disgusting, but he also had a cold. At that moment blood starts dripping from his mouth and the guy says he's gonna call for help, but the same thing happens to him and both fall lifeless to the ground. A man in white clothes ends up coming out from inside that guard's mouth. It looks like he has a shadow power and even says he feels sick after being inside that guy's stomach for so long. One of the soldiers stands up saying that Ipeko is very ambitious in her goals and that lizard guy agrees. Meanwhile, the prisoners were going to take the ability test. At that time, our protagonist, he was entering that machine, and that's when the Catwoman saw Kim. It seems she was planning to release our hero and gave a command to the lizard man, making some hand gestures. He seems to have understood the signal that it was time to start the action. While she was surrounded by guards, she said something. The man asks what she meant, and she repeats it loudly. In fact, she just wanted to use the bathroom, but the man said she was a prisoner and trash like her didn't deserve that, and even started shouting because she kept insisting. The poor cat girl was even stunned by his shouting, but all of this was just to buy time. And at the right moment, she shouts for the lizard man to attack. The guard doesn't understand anything, and under his feet a shadow begins to appear. And from within the shadow, spikes come out finishing off the guards. Next, that shadow blade cuts the handcuff, and while fleeing, a guard was approaching. She said that this guy was pretty fast and even gave an evil laugh, saying that today was going to be intense. The guy charges power in his hands, and she knew that artifact placed on the neck suppressed mana. That's why she goes over there to try to grab that to defend herself. But unexpectedly 4 spells come in her direction. She didn't even know exactly what that was, but it ended up exploding beside her. They were shots from magic weapons and the smoke was really thick. And in the middle of all this, the cat girl, she said she was getting excited. It seemed like it was just another ordinary Monday in the lives of the prison staff. And in the middle of the smoke, the girl appears and she was surrounded by something that seemed to be a protective barrier. The guy didn't really know what that was, but he saw that the space was bending and even gets shocked by it. Shouting, he said that she was going to fire the bullets, and that's exactly what she does. All the shots of magic bullets they fired were launched back. Little by little she was eliminating them one by one. Now she was with her companion, the lizard man, and even said that it was time to look for Kim. Our protagonist, he was there sweating cold, and the woman lets out a laugh. That's because they managed to eliminate all the guards in that sector. Peko, she complains to the Shadow Man saying that he didn't help at all. Who could these people be? I just know they are not part of the princess's plan. But one thing had become clear: there were more than 2 sides in this story trying to free our protagonist. The princess, she didn't look happy at all, and the woman tells Kim that she came to rescue him. He wouldn't need to be afraid of her because she didn't bite. Only if he asked. The princess says that he should follow them first, and he ends up agreeing and going with the Catwoman. The Shadow Man told his companion to stop flirting, because they only had 3 more minutes. She laughed, saying she knows that very well. She said her name was Ipeko, and asked him to follow her. The guy was kind of shocked by the scene he was seeing. That's because there were several lifeless people on the ground. The Catwoman, she keeps making fun of it. He even comments that he didn't like watching horror movies. With her hand all dirty, she said that her mother did that to calm her down. He just had to close his eyes and hold her hand tight. And in a serious way, our boy said that he wasn't going to hold her hand, but deep down he was dying of fear, because he knew she was crazy. The Shadow Man said to go quickly because time was running out. If they didn't escape immediately, they would be caught. At that moment, that snake woman appears behind him. The guy managed to detect her, and Amber said that he was talented. That's because all of his shadows shared the same vision. He ends up going after the snake woman, and with a smile she said she was excited. She manages to dodge the attack, but the shadow seems to leave her with no way out. The Shadow Man, he was feeling safe because that wasn't his real body. But Amber, she had discovered all his secret. His real body was hidden within the shadows. Then she cuts his real body with her blades, and the guy ends up being split in half without much difficulty. If Kim thinks it's bad for him, it's because he doesn't know what awaits him. The snake woman says that now she will deal with the fugitives, and if he thinks he's going anywhere, he was wrong. At that moment, the boy realized that things were much worse than he thought. He knew that snake woman because she worked in the prison, and he knew very well that she was sinister. She was thinking that there must have been some traitor inside Gina, or at least an invader. Asks if it was the Shadow Man and the Catwoman. The princess was there watching everything, and since the snake had the power to visualize mana, she managed to see a spirit beside the boy. Not even the princess was expecting that, and she comments that these mana detection powers are really annoying. She ends up passing by our hero and said that she would deal with the Catwoman first. Ipeko felt a chill down her spine, but she managed to dodge the crowd at the last moment. Besides being powerful, she emanated a dark energy and tries to escape several times while the Catwoman dodges. The battle was getting tense, and Amber was trying to understand how they got into Gina prison. Meanwhile, the Catwoman was analyzing the snake's powers. She seems to track movements with Mana and Kim. He was trying to use his powers, but it wasn't easy at all. The battle was so fast he couldn't even keep up with his eyes. The princess beside him said that this was good, because he could start getting used to it. Even the summoned heroes would need training, and watching 2 monstrosities fighting would be very useful for him. The Catwoman plans to fight until the snake's mana runs out. During the fight, that glass place ends up breaking. Shards fly everywhere, and that disrupts the snake's vision since she couldn't pay attention to multiple targets. The cat knew that and uses her power to throw those glass fragments at her, and with all her skill the snake blocks the attacks. One of the pieces of glass ends up curving, but the snake manages to defend herself. Not even that was working. It seems that Amberlo was much more powerful than the cat imagined, and using her power she starts chasing Ipeko. But it seems she was using more mana than her enemy. Besides detecting magic, she also had much more aura, and that wasn't what the kitty was expecting. Guys, at this moment a gigantic explosion happens and our hero almost gets hit by a power ray. Looking at that destruction, he asks what kind of martial art that was. But it seems now he understood what Princess Netanya meant all this time. The snake, she was much more versatile in movements. Besides being able to detect mana, said the princess, the cat, she was more balanced, while the snake had greater excess mana. In other words, in a prolonged fight, Ipeko would lose. That's why Chin decides to enter the fight. But the princess says that he doesn't have enough strength to help. Even knowing that, he wanted to use his storage power. It seems that the princess, she didn't want him to fight, guys. I don't know why. And she even asks if he was already prepared to take someone's life. Like it or not, he said he was already involved in this. And a little worried, he says he will take the risk. Agreeing with that, the girl explains how the snake's powers work. She could identify even a small amount of mana. That's why it was so hard to hit her. She almost had no blind spots. The luck was that the cat girl was very fast, but little by little she starts being pressured until she is hit on the shoulder. Amber asks if Ipeko had reached her limit, and we see that the cat girl, she was very tired, guys. Charging a dark ray, she said it was time for her to die. The kitty here, she gives a smile, but it was a desperate smile. But she had a secret plan and strikes her blade on the ground, making several stone fragments fly. And she even said that the greatest weakness of someone who detects mana is not focusing on multiple targets. The stones go in several directions until they approach Amber. She laughs, saying that this was useless, and without much difficulty, she dodges all the stones and even charges her final attack. The cat said that she minimized the amount of information, all that to be able to focus on what presented the real risk. At that moment, a large stone falls on top of Amber. Ipeko was aiming at the ceiling and she couldn't sense the presence of that stone approaching because she was focusing on her opponent. That was a powerful ability, but with a weakness. The princess, she asked him if he thought he would be useful in this battle of great proportions. He said he didn't know, but it wouldn't hurt to try. The guy, he only shows up to try to help after the battle was almost over, right? Interesting. Ipeko, she was all hurt, and he hears Amber's noise. She was under the rocks and admits that she had lost. In the end, Ipeko's combat experience ended up being more useful. But she's still, guys, she could give the final attack. The girl gets scared at what she was seeing, and an eye appears on the snake's forehead. An energy began to emanate everywhere, and she managed to get out from under the stone and went toward Ipeko. She was using the rest of her energy to eliminate her opponent. It would be her last alternative, and this power was so strong that she could even predict the future. She manages to hit the girl's belly, and she prepares to block the next attacks. Next, she hits with her tail on the Catwoman's face. And from up there, she thinks she has to finish this fight quickly because her power will last for only 15 more seconds. After falling, she plans to deliver the final blow even stronger. The side effects were already appearing. If she wasn't fast, she wouldn't even be able to use the remaining time. Then Peko, she wonders if she should also overload her abilities and ends up doing that to escape alive. But it didn't work. Amber managed to grab her arm. Then the cat, she uses her ability once again and causes an explosion, pushing both of them away. That was great to buy time, but the damage was high. Realizing the danger, she tries to escape. And Kay, watching all that scene, he knew he would have to help her. Amber, with the rest of her energy, she appears in front of the Catwoman. Her speed was so high that it even distorted space. That attack was devastating, and she even thinks she had managed to win, but at that moment our hero uses his ability. A ray ends up appearing, and what shows up there was a robot. The woman, she doesn't understand anything. And what he had done was throw out of his inventory an item that he had stored. It was the only thing he could do at the moment, guys. The princess watching that mentions that his idea wasn't so bad after all. The weakness of a mana ability was being able to focus on multiple targets, and she even says that he adapted too quickly to the battle. Amber, she ended up running out of energy because she used all the mana that was left, and afterwards she falls to the ground defeated. Kim's left eye was shining in a blue color, and he realized he had eliminated that snake girl. From now on, his path would be stained with blood, since he had eliminated a person, right? But he would do anything to escape from this world. The place was a real mess, and the cat girl, she said that all the guards in this sector had been eliminated. She asks why he was so worried, and our hero, he was disguising, saying that he was grabbing his weapon, but there was something bothering him. To cause turmoil, she had released the other prisoners, and meanwhile they were escaping through an alternative escape route. The boy, he wanted to know who they were for risking their lives just to save him. She says she can't say much, and the only thing she can say is that he is the key. Our big guy, he looks at the princess and realizes she was really tense. And when the cat says he was the key to unlock something, the princess makes an even uglier face. So much that our big guy gets scared. The dude got so scared that he even lost his way. The corridors just ahead were true chaos, and she points upward. They could only escape if they broke the ceiling. He asks her to hold on tight and charges the new power. And so he flies straight to the ceiling. Don't ask me where he pulled that power from because I don't know. And by throwing a punch he manages to break that passage. She keeps flirting, saying that he was really amazing, but he shouldn't relax just because they reached the upper floor. And after hearing the noise they start running. The princess didn't seem to like what happened at all and even leaves, leaving our protagonist kind of confused. He didn't know why she was acting that way. Then Peko, she ends up grabbing him, telling the guy to walk faster and stop stalling. She says they were isolating the area, and if he got separated, not even she would be able to get out. Our boy, he didn't understand anything. Right? What do you mean separated? I don't get it. She explains that there's an ability that confines time and space, and a patrol member had this exact power. In a nearby corridor, reinforcements had arrived. Some criminals were fighting against the guards, and the guy simply traps the projectiles inside the box and keeps telling the guards to complete the evacuation. He himself would eliminate the criminals because they were the ones blamed for all this. They start transforming into monsters, and while farming aura, this other guard says he would use his secret technique and even prepares the special attack. The monster gets trapped inside that magic box and the fingers that remained outside are cut immediately. The guard, he was all convinced and touches a device on his ear saying that the spatial separation operation was completed. On the other side of the call, a man in his sector said he had also finished. He was sitting on top of several enemies. He had eliminated his enemies with ice arrows, and even comments that it was strange. The director is not in the prison today, and that guy with sunglasses keeps saying that this is not a coincidence. It seemed that someone behind the scenes wanted that boy to be freed from prison. There was a girl on top of a slime watching several screens as if they were monitors, and she said the room was open to the public and that was strange. And while we see our protagonist, that woman on top of the slime keeps narrating that they have some disturbing abilities. Several soldiers were in front of Kim. He even wanted to avoid combat and the Catwoman said she used too much mana. So the only way to get out alive was him making a hole in the wall. But those guys, they seem to be under an illusion. And our hero, he gets scared. Then Peko, she gets happy saying that it was Doffel who did that. This strange ability that girl on the slime was talking about was being able to manipulate people. They were infected with a kind of virus and were helping our protagonist escape from prison. That's why they managed to pass by the guards without any battle happening. Before saying goodbye, a guy hands something to a Peko saying it was something she had asked for. Our curious hero, right, asks what that was. And she said it was a magic device used to avoid Gina's automatic fire. For now, it was for him to keep stored in his inventory. Next, they go to a room full of junk, and end up opening another door to escape through there. Above was the hangar with a ship so they could fly away. The prison buildings were huge, and even seemed like a maze. And they were lucky to get there, especially because the opening above the prison was the only way out. The hero, he gets really scared thinking it won't work, but the girl said they just needed to get inside the aircraft and take off. But he had a concern. He wanted to know where the princess was. At that moment, that man in snow clothes appears, and keeps saying that those fugitives were spreading a virus in the prison and holding his ice dart. He says he will eliminate all the criminals. Peko screams telling him to duck, and at that moment the masked man ends up throwing the dart. That was heading toward the shining eye of our protagonist, but he manages to use the storage ability. Not even the masked man expected that. Ah, so you are the boy with the storage ability, aren't you? He realized that dart had frozen his clothes, and even the drop of sweat turned into crystal. Those magic darts had a special property. Pointing a next shot, the guy admits saying that he has the ability to freeze anything. The scene goes back a few moments earlier when he was talking to another masked guy. He introduces himself as Isaac and came to the second floor to provide help. It seemed they were needing people for the training, and he had even already read Kim's report, but the invasion escape hadn't yet started. The masked man, he was nurturing a hatred for Kim, thinking that he really had killed the princess. Even more since he learned that the boy confessed the crime. Using a power, the other masked man said that he had concrete evidence that it was Kim who eliminated the girl. That's because all people in this world had mana fingerprints, and when they arrived at that place they made sure that our protagonist's fingerprint was on Natania's body, so there was no doubt. He was definitely the killer, but since the boy looked like an idiot and seemed weak, they kept saying he was just a common thug. Back to the present, he throws 2 freezing darts. The big guy gets tense, he even manages to absorb 1 dart, but the second ends up curving and was coming his way. He manages to dodge, but right after he falls to the ground because half of his body was half frozen. The girl touches him and realizes he was extremely cold. The right side of our protagonist was frozen, and even his eyes started bleeding. Trying to mock Kim, the masked man keeps saying he can eliminate him even without effort, and says this last dart will be to eliminate him once and for all. But the girl, she was using a barrier and that shot ended up curving. At that moment he had managed to notice there was a black barrier protecting the two, and at that instant they ended up being teleported. The guy already imagined some kind of conspiracy from the Empire or the Kingdom. Here we already begin to see that there are other organizations interested in the power of our protagonist. So he throws several darts and they stay around his body. He imagines that they were teleported inside that aircraft. So he prepares to bring down that vehicle, and after hitting a dart on the door it ends up freezing. He did that so they wouldn't be able to escape from inside. But our big guy, they hadn't entered yet, they were outside. But anyway, the door being frozen was really bad for them. Peko keeps saying that she won't be able to fight because she's out of mana, and would have to leave all the responsibility of this battle in his hands. If she tried to use other spells or powers, she would surely die because she had no energy at all. It wasn't part of the plan to fight against such powerful opponents. Trying to observe the masked man, our protagonist wonders why the princess had fled. The crazy dude there was already preparing to throw another dart, but a group of people infected with the virus appears to stop him. The guy wonders how they got there so fast, but using his power he freezes all the zombies. The poor wretches hadn't even lost consciousness and could speak normally. And the masked man asks if by chance they thought that would stop him. Our big guy together with Peko managed to reach the door, but it seemed the ice had already thawed so he would need to throw another dart and ends up shooting in Peko's direction. The girl would be hit with everything, but our big guy puts his hand in front and absorbs that item. Little by little the guy was being buried by the zombies, but he was getting furious, saying that it wouldn't be fair to let criminals escape, and the worst would still be letting the Empire or the Kingdom get this boy. If that happened, the future would be hell. He keeps hearing the guy say that and even gets angry, and he screams loudly saying that he doesn't care about this world. He just wants to escape from this place. And these people are horrible too, since they had tortured me for several days, even though I did nothing. The cat girl, she gets surprised with those words and even thinks to herself that this world would be better if he hadn't ended up in this place. I confess to you that at this moment in the story, I was already getting very curious to know why he is so important like that. And the ice guy keeps saying that people from Earth are filthy trash and that he had still eliminated an innocent woman. But the big guy up there keeps shouting, saying that he didn't kill any woman. Ipeko tells him to focus on escaping, since the masked man was just trying to buy time. He would need to keep calm. And after entering the cabin, she says that he needs to stand guard. She was sent by someone to save him and couldn't reveal anything more about that. She said that he would need to follow everything she said, especially because this world wasn't all wonders. She didn't know how Earth was, if it was comfortable or not, but in this place he would need to remain with his head held high and follow the strongest people. One of the zombies ends up opening the hangar door and the light begins to come in little by little. She keeps saying that using magic in combat was essential and she couldn't let him be killed, since he was the key, someone very important. If by any chance he died in this escape, all her effort would have been in vain. One of the zombies keeps saying that the Catwoman will finally escape, and the Iceman starts to get nervous, saying that all his effort was in vain. Using his maximum power, he freezes all the zombies and shatters them as if they were nothing. The big guy realized that the man had managed to escape and now he would use his ice power to try to stop the aircraft. The lunatic starts running, and the girl, she keeps saying that the ship needs to take off quickly, but since it took time to heat the ship, she would need to fight. He was struggling to manage to touch the ship. So as a form of sacrifice, Ipeko uses the overload skill, and in this way she teleports the aircraft. She was creating a kind of distortion. The man ends up being dragged and he didn't understand what this ability of hers did. That was like a black hole that sucked everything in. He grabs his little shooting weapon and tries to hold on to something. And meanwhile, inside that ship, Ipeko, she was badly injured. She managed to start the engines and set it to autopilot. He would now need to bring out that tool that looked like a compass that he had stored in the inventory. But the girl was very weak and ends up fainting. Our hero, of course, he already panics because he was alone, and when he looks up, the ice lunatic was on top of the glass. And he said that the Catwoman would suffer the side effects of having used maximum energy. The boy gets nervous and starts preparing his absorption skill. That black hole was destroying the entire Gaina prison. And the masked man even explains that overloading a skill would basically mean certain death. That's because depending on the skill, there could be other costs beyond mana, and he even tells the idiot boy to give up right away, because there won't be anyone there to save him. The black hole seems to be disappearing, and punching the glass, he tries to get inside the aircraft. Little by little, that thick glass begins to crack, and looking at Ipeko, he thinks of doing something desperate. There was no way he could win a fight against that masked man, and in desperation he tries to store Ipeko inside the inventory. But that didn't work with living beings, guys. And although she was about to die, she was still alive. Heard a loud noise, he looks up and realizes the man was almost breaking the glass. And with no choice, he ends up picking the girl up in his arms. Looking to the side, he saw that there was a door with parachutes and tries to check something using that compass. No matter what happened, he would do anything to stay alive. The masked man finally manages to break the glass. And now our protagonist would be screwed. He grabs his harpoon gun and after shooting, he manages to go down there and give the command for the ship to return to Gaina. But the autopilot wasn't working. Yet anyway, he would have to eliminate that trash. Going down the stairs, he starts looking for our hero, but the big guy had disappeared. He noticed something behind the boxes and quickly pulled out his ice dart. He threw it with the intention of eliminating our protagonist. But that was just a magic weapon lying on the ground. A box appears behind the man and he manages to dodge and already prepares another dart. Next to the guard, our protagonist appears. He summons a weapon and was in a great position to eliminate his enemy and starts firing several point-blank shots, but a dart ends up falling in front, and by shooting that dart, a great ice explosion happens. Isaac is thrown far away and our hero realized the man didn't die. As much as the shots had hit directly, he only took shots in non-lethal areas. But the good news is that Isaac's right arm was disabled. Laughing, he said he underestimated the boy, since he thought he could only swap objects around. In that fight, he threw the heavy box behind the man on top of the stairs and emerged from the shadow only to shoot him. At that moment, our protagonist hides behind a metal beam and, while protected, he opened fire. But of course Isaac wasn't going to stand still and quickly threw a box to defend himself. Those bullets end up hitting the aircraft wall, and using the harpoon, he approaches the boy. The battle was frantic and the man looked like a Spider-Man jumping back and forth. After kicking the door, it ended up breaking. And even though the boy had combat experience, because of games, it was still very different from real life. After entering that room, the boy was cornered. Isaac had taken Ipeko hostage and said that if the boy didn't throw the gun away, she would be eliminated. He was in a dead end and didn't know what else to do. The man knew the girl was probably hidden inside that hold, and if by chance the boy wanted the cat girl to come out alive, he would have to surrender once and for all. Laughing, Kim said, "I will not surrender no matter what," and the man says that if by chance Ipeko dies, he won't be able to escape very far. Therefore, he would like to make a deal with the boy. If he surrendered by throwing the gun, he would not execute him nor the cat woman, because that girl, she had very valuable information that could help in Gina prison. And besides, the boy's plan had failed, so he wouldn't get anywhere. Kim, he ends up swallowing hard and throwing the weapon on the ground. Raising his arms, he said he was surrendering. "I admit I didn't expect that, guys. I thought he would prefer to die." Relieved, the masked man said that everything ended in the most peaceful way possible and even orders the boy to kneel. "Listen, I have no intention of doing anything bad to your world. I just wanted to go back to my original world, that's all." Touching the ground, a lightning starts to appear in all directions. Isaac didn't understand what was happening. But our big guy, he wasn't gonna surrender, guys. He preferred death. A huge explosion happens. The aircraft starts to get turbulent. Giving a little laugh, he said the negotiation was over. The aircraft starts falling hard and the hole begins to want to suck them out. The man admits he didn't expect the boy to do something like that. He was risking his own life, but he wouldn't surrender no matter what happened. An electric energy begins to appear around Isaac's body. And our protagonist, he gets surprised. The man jumped, breaking the wall, and it seemed like he was moving at a much higher speed. Our big guy tries to understand if that was mana emission. The man simply appears near our hero and lands a knee on his shoulder. The impact is strong, throwing him against the wall. The man said he could use a power called gravitational field, and to increase his chances of getting out alive, he would need to grab the parachutes in the pilot's cabin. Although this aircraft had a gravity decelerator, the impact would still be very big, and considering this height, they could indeed survive using parachutes. But it seems our protagonist had already thought of a plan. The man asks if the boy is really willing to risk his own life. And it seems so, guys. Mr. Kim was motivated to continue this battle no matter what. He must be thinking, there's no way I'm going back to that prison. The boy tries to absorb the weapon the man was using, but he can't. And as the aircraft was spinning in the air, everything there turns into chaos, and they start falling to all sides. The man holds a dart while the boy tries to absorb it, but since there wouldn't be time, he throws the box on top of the man. But by pressing the dart, a huge ice explosion happens. He managed to break that box in midair because of the dart's power, and the big guy was surprised because he didn't know the man could do that. And in an unexpected way, he ends up landing a punch on our hero with the injured arm. The blow was powerful and he even flew far away. Right after, he keeps complaining, saying that his arm hurts a lot. Since he had used mana emission, that blow was much stronger than normal, and the big guy was even knocked out. Now he would have to finish this battle to give no chance for the boy to win. This only worked because in the end the boy had lowered his guard. At that moment he ends up throwing the dart to give the final attack. But Kim, he ended up waking up and managed to block it with his ability. And he did it just like that first time when he managed to free himself from that illusion. But now he managed to store an ability. He was not only able to store items but also spells, guys. And he ended up throwing it back at Isaac. A gigantic explosion happens and the man starts complaining, saying he didn't expect that. But the ice wave also hit our hero and he was left with half of his body frozen. But that didn't matter. He was willing to do anything to get out alive. When he looks to the side, he realizes Ipeko was awake. She managed to survive the collateral damage and said she already had the parachutes ready. But something appears behind our hero, and when he looks in that direction, he gets surprised. Who was there was Netanya, and next to her there was another being. This person had 4 eyes and a strange appearance, and immediately used a power, hitting Ipeko directly in the stomach. The princess still says that the hero defeated the mobile team as she had predicted, and now it was time to start moving. She was saying this to Keel, who is that weird lunatic. Back to the present Ipeko, she was really hit, guys, and our big guy, he gets a little tense, because he knows it will be very difficult for her to survive because of that blow. And giving an evil laugh, she says that this wouldn't work, and even keeps mocking our big guy, calling him a foolish hero, since he followed strangers. As if she wasn't strange too. When he started following her, he uses the skill to take off her clothes faster. All this to use the fabric to try to stop the bleeding. He presses it hard on the girl and ties it tight, but the princess keeps saying that it wouldn't help at all, and even comments that he was already getting used to the storage skills. The 4 eyes says that the boy still couldn't properly use the ability. That's why his powers were terribly insufficient. Our hero, he tries to protect himself while the man keeps saying the boy was pathetic. With overwhelming strength, he throws the boy to the ground and says that the storage ability is very strong, but the boy there is weak because he can't use it. What was that? He moved so fast I couldn't even see him. Netanya tells Keel to be careful, because it was getting dangerous. At that moment the man stops and says they almost fell and died, but the boy had managed to store it. Our hero wasn't understanding anything, but the man says that he had stored the fuel of the Bicon. The 4 eyes also had the storage ability, and using the powers, he managed to slow the ship, preventing it from crashing completely into the sea. The impact from the break was so strong that the boy was thrown far away, causing dizziness, saying he felt like vomiting. However, the most surprising thing of all was that there were other people with storage powers. With a bored look, the princess keeps telling this guy not to reveal so much information, and even asks if Keel had really eliminated that girl cat. He said he didn't eliminate her, but the injury is fatal. She's going to die in 1 or 2 minutes. If you guys aren't understanding anything, imagine me reading this in English. I was more lost than someone in a firefight. Kim asks what the real goal of the princess is, and if she could really send him back to Earth. She says that her faith and goals are not different from his and could even call it a shared destiny. But he couldn't believe it, guys. In his inventory, he still had data stored and he uses it against the princess. But that guy manages to tear a piece of his shirt and keeps that rope floating. At that moment, he realized the level of difference between him and this guy. If he had been 1 second faster, everything would have been different. Netanya even tells the boy to stop resisting because there's no reason for him to fight, and warns Keel a little not to kill the boy. The guy even says he's doing his best not to overdo it. Taking advantage of this gap, our hero tries to escape. He goes to that other room and grabs the weapon that was on the floor. Aiming at that masked man, he fires and the shots go toward the guy, saying the boy was brave but lacked experience. He blocks those attacks with the shield, but that was the plan. He wanted to block Keel's vision, so he aimed elsewhere and fired more shots to attract attention. However, the weapon he was using ended up exploding. The guy says that without proper preparation, he can't master this weapon. Besides, he didn't have just one ability. Our hero wonders if this masked man also came from Earth because he was managing to see the princess. The power difference between them was very large. Besides, this guy had a lot of combat experience, so if you were a hero from Earth, he must have arrived there a long time ago. Netanya says that Shiel's ability is to copy, and he managed to copy the storage ability. The special ability of this guy was very good, guys. That's why the princess goes there and keeps telling our big guy to give up fighting. But when the princess approached, he felt a sense of deja vu. It seemed like he had met this guy before. And it was strange for Kim that someone had managed to copy his ability, and there was only one person who could do that. He even comments that he should have realized it earlier, back the first time he arrived in this world. He imagines that this is probably the guy responsible for him being imprisoned in Gina, so he starts shouting saying he will kill that bastard. Then Ipeko starts saying her final words, and on her deathbed she has memories seeing many things that happened in her life. She even sees someone giving her an order saying she should come back alive, but it seems it was an order she wouldn't be able to fulfill. She couldn't even keep her eyes open. Meanwhile, our protagonist was there causing chaos. She imagined that those guys were there waiting for them to enter the aircraft all this time. That's why their mission ended up failing. For you to understand, guys, she thinks that the masked guy there, the ice guy, and the other one who appeared, they were from another group also trying to kidnap the protagonist. Meanwhile, the big guy was there all injured because the weapon exploded. That guy asks if the boy has realized now. He was too young and didn't have enough skill to fight him. Then Ipeko, she was taking her last breaths, and looks down and sees a weapon very close to her foot. She imagined that they knew they would escape in this aircraft and hid inside it. Using the last trace of mana, she pulls that weapon. Failure would be inevitable, and she had already accepted her fate a long time ago, but at least she wanted to save Kim. The Four Eyes noticed that the girl was armed and our hero started shouting, and immediately the man grabbed our hero by the neck. He couldn't speak anymore, but at that moment the Four Eyes' arm was hit. She still had a little overload of ability, that's why she was able to move. The man asked if she hadn't already died, and she said she had lost a long time ago, but she could still use a little power. That guy's arm was robotic, and when he releases our protagonist, his arm starts sparking. The princess asks what Shield is doing, and that he should eliminate that girl immediately. However, he knew it would be very dangerous and says that it's better to flee. Just looking at that girl cat's face, you can already tell something bad is going to happen. Our hero can't believe what he's seeing and asks if she's okay. There are 6 seconds left for the teleportation to take them away. The girl breathes in that blue smoke and asks if he also used the ability overload. At that moment they start disappearing gradually, and she tells our hero that she hopes to see him soon, that she always wanted to meet him because she admired him since she was a child. After all, he was the only one who could save this rotten world, because he was the true hero. Then Ipeko also says that he is the only one who can save the world, and she was about to explode. And at that moment our protagonist wasn't understanding anything anymore. I don't know about you guys, but I find this very interesting. The princess said she's admired him since she was a child, so start making your theories. At that moment she ends up jumping from the aircraft and crashing into the water. Meanwhile, at the Central, the guards were discussing the future. They wanted to know what they were going to do now that our hero had escaped. He announces to everyone that a large part of Gina prison has been destroyed, and the people there are shocked. The strangest thing of all is that the prison chief wasn't there. The old man keeps saying that the impenetrable fortress ended up being invaded, and that Professor of Amber, he gets angry, telling the old man to shut up. If it hadn't been for that useless hearing, they would have been there and prevented this. And he keeps saying it's the fault of this old man who keeps scheduling useless meetings. But what this old man was really worried about was the reputation of the prison. They sent the warden to go after our protagonist, and the director says that even though he's a Terran, he is trustworthy. It seems that the people at the meeting didn't really agree with what they were saying, and the old man still tells the director that the hero group was also involved. Touching her shoulder, he says that someone should take responsibility, meaning she should take the blame. Stomping her foot on the ground, she emits her aura, and comments that this was planned from the start, as they wanted to make her the scapegoat. The director's partner sighs and says he's fed up with these alliances between the Empire and the Kingdom, and this war seems to never end. First they fought a battle against the demons, and now the humans were fighting among themselves. Adjusting her beret, the director says that everything was calculated. They had excluded her and the captain of Gina prison just so Kim could escape, but they wouldn't let it go easily and were already looking for the boy and going to the wreckage of that aircraft. The other employees arriving at the prison start helping the wounded and even say there were many casualties. There were 47 deaths and 58 severely injured, plus 120 people who had minor injuries. Furthermore, the 2 crew members in the mobile team were also killed, and one of them was Amber, a student of this captain. The director says they need to notify the girl's family, and the people at the meeting start wanting to talk about other matters. But the director gave great importance to her people and even wanted to know how they used magic inside the prison, because there was an area where no kind of spell could be used. The only place where mana could be used was inside those huge tubes they use for skill tests. She had met with the other guards and they wanted to know how they had infiltrated the prison. They say that the one who invaded was a Peko, a girl with a distortion ability, and a male demon with a shadow ability, and they also infected other humans. They say that first the shadow guy took advantage of some guards who were on vacation and entered them through that shadow. And it seems they had been studying this plan for a long time to even know which employees were on vacation at that time. The director asks what happened next. They explain that the soldiers passed the physical and mental exams and couldn't identify the shadow because he was inside the internal organs. The director says that this is exactly the part that had caught her attention. She wanted to know how they managed to use magic inside the prison, since infiltrating was even easier. They keep discussing to figure out how they did it. Meanwhile, the woman thinks that the kingdom and the empire were trying to set something up. Getting up, she asks the mobile team what they thought. But the people there weren't paying much attention, guys. They were playing little games. That guy who had the power of the magic boxes keeps saying that it wasn't the empire that did this. The masked guy said he agrees, doesn't think it was the empire. The dog woman doesn't say anything, and the other one who looks like an eagle, I don't know, a hawk, just keeps sleeping. But on the other hand, they think the kingdom must have something to do with it, since they were looking for the key. The old man agrees with this woman, and they all imagine that it was the kingdom that ordered the boy to be kidnapped. Throwing the cards, the white-haired boy says he would like to say something. Instead of trying to figure things out, they should track the fugitive. The director says he is right, and that they should do that indeed. But the order had already been given. She had located the warden, and he was about 8 kilometers away. Upon hearing this, the guy gets all angry, saying he will find the boy and eliminate him. This is because Kim had killed his dear colleague Amber. It seems the people there were harboring a great hatred for our hero. Many of them wanted to go hunt the boy, but the director says that's not possible. She had already lost many soldiers, so she couldn't let them lose their lives too. Isaac and Amber were novices and not so good at combat, which is why they died. So they would have to send someone more experienced. The guy keeps grinding his teeth in anger, and after pointing at the 2 girls says that they should handle this. The hawk woman wakes up, and it seems the dog woman wasn't too eager to participate in this mission. But without complaining, they get up saying they will avenge their colleague. The scene changes to a portal opening and we see the princess along with Kial. She wanted to know why the guy acted alone and besides not rescuing the hero also didn't eliminate the girl cat, and he simply says that he did what should be done. As she should already know, there are 2 keys needed to unlock that artifact, which is the Sword of Light and the symbol. It seems they already had the key and the only thing missing was the symbol, which represented our protagonist. And it had something to do with his storage ability, Kial says. The princess says that if that boy's ability doesn't work, they would force it. But Kim had a better way to acquire the overload, the guy says. But she ends up warning him that for the guy's objective to be fulfilled, she first had to fulfill her own objective, since he wanted to return to Earth. So we see, guys, that he really was a Terran. He still tells Natania to stay calm, because Kim is alive, and there was our boy, guys, all patched up, poor thing. And he was still tied to the bed. He opens his eyes and becomes desperate. At that moment, 2 people appear in the room, and in a strange way, the doctor asks if the boy is woken up, and even says it's weird that the boy opened his eyes and questions if he's having trouble seeing. The other one keeps analyzing the situation, and meanwhile, the only thing Kim can think is that he doesn't know where he is. He realizes he's really tied up, so he needs to use his powers to escape this place as quickly as possible. The big lizard says that the boy has something strange in his eyes, and the doctor warns that they shouldn't have tied the boy, as it would only make him more nervous. At that moment, Kim uses his powers and manages to break the rope. The guys didn't understand, and with his arm free, he uses his storage ability again and makes the bed disappear. Now that he's free, he can escape. The doctor tells the big lizard to wait a moment. He himself will take the boy. While fleeing, he tries to find an exit and even asks what happened to him. The last thing he remembers is a Peko exploding in the sea, but he was in a very weakened state. Using his powers, the doctor reaches the boy very quickly. At that moment, Kim realizes that this guy also has a magical power. Touching his shoulder, the guy asks him to wait and knocks him to the ground so the boy can calm down. And he also says it's dangerous to run in a hospital corridor. First of all, he should stay calm and listen to the story. But our boy, guys, uses his power again and opens a hole in the ground, falling completely and hitting his back. Then he realizes there are ordinary people in that hospital, and everyone is staring at him. At that moment, a blonde girl appears, kicking our protagonist in the stomach. He tries to block it, but he can't, so he is thrown backward. In a somewhat irritated way, she asks what the hell he thinks he's doing. I don't know if you guys noticed this too, but I think she looks a little like the director. Wow, you look at her and notice she's strong, but not as much as Amber or Peko. So he should be able to eliminate her since he has become more powerful. He had already killed other people before, so one more wouldn't make a difference, especially since he would have to do absurd things to get out of there alive. At that moment, the green-headed doctor arrives, telling everyone to stay calm. The girl says that guy is strange and dangerous, but the doctor defends him, saying that all of this is confusing for him since he just woke up. Our boy was already calmer, and as he crouched down, the man asks if he had calmed down. With many questions, he asks what place this is and how long he had been asleep. The man says this is the pioneer village of the kingdom. Upon hearing that he's in the kingdom, the boy imagines that this place is far from where he had stopped. He even wonders if these people know that he is a Terran and is called a hero in this world, especially since there were other summoned ones in this world. How long have I been in this place? About a day, he thinks. The doctor says no. He had been sleeping for 3 full days. Meanwhile, the people from Gina prison went to the wreckage. They were conducting various studies to try to analyze the mana magic left at the site. The dog woman also seemed to be playing with a plush toy and ended up making a little kitten. But at that moment the little toy disappeared. The hawk woman appeared to take it from her hand. They were there to deal with the fugitives and not to be playing with dolls. Pretending she dropped it by accident, she throws it into the sea. At that moment a hero appears. It was precisely the boy who was summoned along with our protagonist. He uses his power and retrieves the little toy, and the 2 girls find that a bit curious. He had the little toy in his hand, and the women say that he has finally arrived. This was the hero's group, so we see his arrival in this world from his perspective. 4 heroes were summoned, and he saw that our protagonist Kim was very arrogant and even got angry, saying that this boy thinks too highly of himself. As soon as he came to this world and acquired skills, he had a kind of instant knowledge. Our hero was having his ability read by that equipment, but this boy seems as if he already knew what his power was, and ends up using some magic cards, feeling as if he already knew how to use this ability completely. He even mentions that it's as if he had already learned it automatically in his mind, and what was curious was why the princess needed to conduct skill tests. At that moment he saw something appearing in front of all of them. It was as if someone had appeared there. Moments later when he woke up he realized that several people were lifeless. The other heroes had also fainted, and guards were restraining Kim while he said he did nothing. The guy was confused, not knowing what had happened, and the poor hero continued insisting that he had done nothing to the princess. Back to the present, the ponytail guy was there to carry out his mission. He was hired to find our protagonist and even says that he still hasn't gotten used to this kind of thing, and treats the girls badly, calling them animals. But that Emma with a dog face didn't say anything. One of the hero's assistants said that he was being very rude, and in his defense he says that it's those animals who need his help, not the other way around. And since he is superior, he would treat badly whoever he wanted. The dog woman crouches to pick up the little toy. Meanwhile, that shameless jerk keeps saying that he should not have consideration, and even less treat anyone politely. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't like this character from the start. In an arrogant way, he asks why they called him, and the pastoral woman thinks that he's too full of himself for a guy who was a whole day late. She ends up saying that the mission is to track a fugitive convict. He had already heard that this fugitive caused a huge mess, and the girl ends up explaining everything that happened. As you could see, much of the wreckage of the ship had already been recovered, but many parts were still sunken deep in the sea, and he wanted the boy to use the hero group's ability. At that moment the boy calls his assistant, and the guy already knew what to do and jumped into the sea. Upon touching the water, he uses his ability and begins to read mana. He could read the memories of the places, and after touching the bald man's shoulder, he starts the projection, and in this way they begin to reconstruct the entire scene. It was impossible to know what happened inside the non-linear space. Only the surface was visible. Then they start going back a little before the explosion, and reach the exact moment that Ipiko had self-exploded. The Hawk Girl wonders if that was the famous projection ability. Thinking about it guys, this ability to see the past is really overpowered. Water ends up happening, and the pastoral woman is shocked. A kind of jump phenomenon occurred. The conceited boy asks what that was. This jump phenomenon was basically a time travel, which meant that probably someone inside the ship had traveled in time. What she feared most is that the fugitive criminal ended up going to a near past. The scene returns to our protagonist in that village. The big lizard was showing the place where Kim was found, and upon arriving the boy asks what the hell had happened. He wasn't supposed to have survived that explosion. At that moment the blonde girl appears saying that Princess Netanya was holding a press conference, and the boy realized that he ended up in the past when Netanya was still alive, and her meeting was to summon heroes. Yeah guys, this story is getting really interesting. The interviewer asks why she will summon 4 heroes instead of 1. She says that an uncontrolled summoning of heroes 9 years ago ended up causing a war, and the kingdom did not forget the damage caused by the empire. Therefore the kingdom's alliance, which was very weak in power, would do whatever was necessary to become stronger. That's why she concluded that heroes were necessary. The boy was watching all of this. Some people supported what she was saying and others were afraid of the Terrans because they were dangerous. Thus we conclude the first part of this story. There are still a few chapters left, and if you want me to bring the continuation, comment below. YouTube isn't recommending our video guys, so it's very important that you leave a comment so the video can be boosted. Also leave a hype and a like if you enjoyed it. I'll leave here 2 recommended videos from the channel that I'm sure you will like. That's it. Thanks and see you later everyone.